Hey yogis, so I thought that for today's tutorial I would dial it back a little bit and do a more of a 101, a yoga 101 tutorial. We're going to do warrior 1 and warrior 2. And here's the thing, so obviously I love arm balances and handstands and that's all candy, right? But we spend a lot of time in yoga doing those poses like warrior 1 and warrior 2 and trikonasana triangle. That'll be my next one. But whether you are new to the yoga practice or whether you are a very experienced yogi, I urge you not to get complacent in your practice with your form and with your alignment. And there is always space, no matter how experienced you are, to try to look at these poses with fresh eyes, right? And try to refine. It is a lifelong practice, these basic poses, for sure. And I think sometimes what happens is we start yoga with a certain body and we learn poses, and then a year later or maybe 2 years later, we're still practicing those poses the same, even though our body has changed. And that maybe we could find a little bit of a deeper expression of it. So anyway, so whether you are brand new or whether you're super duper advanced, far more than me, and you could teach me some stuff, maybe I'm gonna say some words that will trigger a new physical response when you're in these poses. So let's start with warrior 1. So warrior 1, I'm going to, I guess I'll go this way, right? I'll show you from the side. So I have my right foot forward. I've got my left foot back. And I do want you to, I also like to encourage students to remember that there are different lineages of yoga. There are different styles of yoga. There are some different stylistic things about yoga, right? So one practice might have your arms up and looking straight forward at the neutral neck, right? Another practice, right, if you're in Ashtanga, you're gonna bring your hands together, you're gonna squeeze your palms together, you're gonna drop your head back, you're gonna look up, right? And that there are different lineages, and resist the temptation of you went to a yoga class and you loved the yoga teacher and they told you how to do the pose, and so that is the be all end all and I refuse to look at any other possible expression of that pose. So just, resist that temptation. I think we all have that tendency a little bit. So with warrior 1, my hips, and you'll hear this a lot, my hips are gonna try to be square. Now for a lot of us that's kind of anatomically impossible because that left foot is pointing out, right? It's in a little, it's probably at about a 45 to 60 degree angle. I don't have a protractor with me. But it's in a little bit, but it's still out. So that's gonna be pretty hard to square off my hips. And you'll notice that when I do square off those hips, that's a lot of torque on that back leg. So if you are starting yoga, and let's say you're 40 years old and you've got a whole lifetime of athletic injuries, in the rearview mirror, that might be a lot of torque for you. And so the traditional heel to heel or even heel to arch alignment, while trying to square off your hips, that's gonna maybe potentially lead you into injury. So if that's you, I want you to feel free to maybe heel toe that front foot out, maybe heel toe that back foot out, so that your heels, when we're talking about the horizontal space, are a little bit closer to hip distance apart, right? That's a perfectly legitimate place to work. And then over time, as you gain flexibility, maybe you can start bringing that heel to heel alignment, right? Super important to keep a neutral spine, right? So, and a neutral pelvis, right? So it might be tempting to want to get deeper into this pose, but now I've got my pelvis is in a little bit of an anterior tilt, right? If it were a bucket of water, it would be spilling forward. And then I'm gonna try and overcompensate, right? So I'm gonna lift my ribs up, okay? So now I'm in too deep of a lunge, and my pelvis, my booty is sticking out, and my ribs are flared up because I wanna feel like I'm upright, right? And then I'm gonna reach my arms up while I'm in a nice big back bend, aren't I? Okay, and then maybe I'm in a really uncomfortable back bend. So if that means you come out of it a little bit in order to find that neutral pelvis, right? That lift of your lower abdominals, that support of your pelvic floor, and then you can start to bend, but only while you keep the integrity of your core. Your ribs, pull them together, right? Knitted together, we're not gonna let them flare out. We're gonna keep them knitted together, and can you hold the integrity of your core even as you lift your arms up, right? Maybe even as you drop your head back. That doesn't mean you're in a back bend. I'm not in a back bend. My pelvis is neutral, my spine is neutral, my palms are straight up, my forearms are squeezing together, my head is back, right? My right knee is over that right ankle, not beyond it, right? Ooh, you can maybe get to 90, right? That's a good place to work if you have the opening in that back leg. But you definitely don't want to be here, right? Now my knee is jutting out over my toes. That's a lot of pressure on your knee joint. I don't even want to stay there too long. I'm too old. that will for sure lead to injury. So if you're here, right, find a bigger stance so that you can be here, okay? Hips are square. Now, even if those hips are pointing out a little bit, right, we're just gonna forgive that because we're gonna practice in the real world, not in the yoga perfect 25-year-old world. Right, we're gonna start over the years trying to find more of a square pelvis, but it may not totally happen. That doesn't mean that that rib cage isn't completely square. Okay, so that means there's a little bit of a twist. All right, warrior two. Let's talk warrior two. So now again, we're gonna have a conversation about real world yoga and perfect world yoga. In a perfect world yoga, so I've got my right foot forward, right? My right toes are gonna be pointed straight forward. And in a perfect world yoga, my hips would be completely open to the side. And I would still be able to bend my right knee and have it track over my second toe, right? So I should be able to see that front big toe. Well, I can tell you that I've got my knee tracking over the right toe here. My hips are no longer square because in order to square it, I would need that right front knee to cave in. And I don't want to do that because now I'm putting pressure along the inside of that right knee. So it is way more important. There's always like a priority list, right, in yoga and poses and alignment. And my priority is going to be to protect this knee, rotate that front femur, that's your big thigh bone, externally inside the ball and socket of my pelvis, so that when I bend into that right knee, it tracks over my second toe. So it is completely stable. That right knee is lined up right over my right hip. Now something I see a lot, right, is this in warrior two, so this leaning forward. And there's a couple of things that are causing this, right? One is I'm literally leaning forward and my shoulders are not lined over my hips, right? They're at an angle. So I'm gonna want them to come up. But it's not so simple as taking this pose and then cranking it here. So now the sides of my waist are a different size, right? This one's all scrunched up, this one's long, and that's because my pelvis isn't straight and neutral, right? So the way you get from here, right, or even here, is I'm gonna take this back hip and I'm gonna tuck, 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 tuck as far as it'll go. And once I tuck that under, my shoulders are lined up right over my hips. Both sides of my waist are even, right? My right knee is at 90 degrees. My left leg is nice and activated, right? Weight is even in my feet. If you come into warrior two and that right leg is screaming, you're probably leaning forward. Okay, so I'm gonna tuck this under. I'm gonna line up my shoulders over my hips. Now, just because my pelvis can't quite be square, right? Because I live in the real world, doesn't mean that my ribs can't be square. So without taking your pelvis, you're just gonna rotate your ribs so that they are square to the side. Your arms are gonna be strong and straight, fingers are together, triceps are engaged, right? No bingo wings, please. Triceps are engaged. There's a slight pinch of your shoulder blades on your back, looking out over that right hand. There's an engagement of your core, squeezing in, engagement of your ribs, rooting down through that right heel, through that front heel. Whew. All right, that was a long hold in my warriors. So try it, get back to basics. You know, we don't just go through the motions in your practice. I encourage you to constantly be examining, right? Both inside and outside. So thank you, yogis. I'm always taking requests, so you can always DM me or leave a comment, and I will happily address whatever you need.